I caught my sister with my fiancé on her couch. So I brought the guy she stalked for 4 years to family dinner. There's a specific sound a key makes when you open the door to your house earlier than you should. A metallic click, almost innocent. A sound that should signify comfort, security, home. For me, that sound became the exact marker of the moment my life split into before and after. I had forgotten my wallet. A silly thing, stupid even. I had gone out to meet Rachel for lunch and only realized it when I was at the restaurant. "Forget about it," Rachel had said. "I'll pay today." But I insisted. My apartment was only 10 minutes away. It would be quick. Fast enough to destroy everything. Victoria's apartment door was ajar. Strange, because my sister was paranoid about security. 3 locks, an alarm system, all that paranoia of someone living alone in a big city. But that day, the door was open, just leaning. I should have knocked, should have announced my presence, but something made me stop. A primitive instinct, that chill down your spine you feel when you know something is wrong, but your brain hasn't processed what yet. That's when I heard it. A moan. Low. Intimate. Unmistakable. My body reacted before my mind. Frozen hands, racing heart, that nausea that rises from the pit of your stomach when you just know that you're about to see something that cannot be undone. I pushed the door slowly. Victoria's apartment was always impeccable, minimalist, everything in shades of white and gray except for that blood-red couch she had bought last year. "It's bold," she had said. "It's a statement." It was a statement, all right, just not the one she imagined. They were on the red couch. Marcus, my Marcus, the man who had proposed to me 6 months ago, the man who had cried when I said yes, was on top of my sister. His hands in her hair, his mouth on hers, their clothes scattered on the floor like breadcrumbs marking the path of betrayal. There are things your brain refuses to process, as if reality were so absurd that your mind simply rejects it. For 3 whole seconds, I stood there, watching, and my brain insisted, this isn't real. It can't be real. The sound that came out of my throat wasn't human. It was something primitive, animal, a sound that came from a place so deep I didn't even know existed within me. They separated as if they had been electrocuted. Marcus turned pale. No, beyond pale. Gray, like a corpse. Victoria didn't look scared. For a split second, before the mask dropped, I saw something in her eyes. Triumph. "Sophie?" Marcus's voice was broken. "God, Sophie, I can explain." "Explain?" The word came out like glass. "You're going to explain how your tongue was down my sister's throat?" "Sophie, calm down." Victoria was getting dressed, her movements deliberately slow. Calm, as if this were just a slight inconvenience. "You're being dramatic." Dramatic? She used the word dramatic while I looked at the wreckage of my life scattered on her red couch. "How long?" My voice didn't sound like mine. It was too calm, too controlled. Someone else's voice. Marcus and Victoria exchanged a look. In that look was everything. Familiarity, intimacy, shared secrets. How long do you need with someone to develop that kind of silent communication? 3 months, Marcus finally said, and every word was a knife. "Sophie, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." "It just happened?" I laughed, and the sound was hysterical even to my own ears. "Sophie?" Victoria took a step towards me, and I recoiled as if she were poison. "You need to understand. Marcus and we connected. For real. What you two had was childish, based on fantasy. What we have is real." Real? 3 months of betrayal, of lies, of looking me in the eye every week at family dinners and pretending to be my loving sister? That was real to her. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. Sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones who most easily stab you in the back. I took off my engagement ring. The diamond caught the light. Marcus had saved for months to buy it. Or at least that's what he had said. Now I wondered if that was also a lie. Keep it. I threw the ring onto the red couch. You deserve each other. I walked out of that apartment and didn't look back. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just left. It was only when I got to my car, when I locked the doors and sat in the suffocating silence, that I collapsed. It wasn't delicate movie tears. It was pure ugliness, sobs that shook my entire body, snot running, that kind of crying that comes from such a deep place it physically hurts. Rachel found me there 20 minutes later. She didn't ask. She just opened the door, pulled me out, and hugged me as I fell apart in the parking lot. "I'm going to kill her," Rachel said when I finally managed to speak, when I finally managed to tell her what I had seen. "I'm literally going to kill Victoria." "Get in line." My voice was hoarse. "I'm first." But in that moment, I had no idea how. I just knew that Victoria had destroyed my life, and that somehow, someway, she was going to pay. The next 2 weeks were a blur. I moved into Rachel's apartment, blocked Marcus on everything, ignored Victoria's incessant calls, her messages saying that we needed to talk, that she could explain. Explain what? How she had systematically destroyed my life while pretending to be my loving sister? How she had looked me in the eye every week and lied? My mother was the one who finally forced me to face the situation. She showed up at Rachel's apartment on a Tuesday night, her face a mask of disapproval. "Sophie, this has gone too far." She didn't even wait to be invited in. "Victoria is devastated. You don't answer her calls, don't reply to messages. She's desperate." "She's devastated?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, she slept with my fiancé." "These things happen, Sophie," my mother sighed, as if we were discussing a small disagreement. "Relationships end, people connect. You need to be mature about it." In that moment, I realized something that should have been obvious for years. My mother had always favored Victoria, always. And even now, even with the betrayal so obvious, she was still on her side. "Mature?" My voice was dangerously low. "You want me to be mature about my sister destroying my relationship?" "Victoria didn't destroy anything." My mother crossed her arms. "If Marcus fell in love with her, it's because something was missing in your relationship. You need to accept your share of responsibility in this." Rachel made a sound of disbelief. "Mrs. Bennet, with all due respect, that's absurd." "Nobody asked for your opinion, Rachel." My mother didn't even look at her. "Sophie, Victoria wants you to come to family dinner on Saturday. She and Marcus have an announcement to make." The world stopped. An announcement? "They're engaged." My mother said it as if she were announcing the weather. "Victoria wants your blessing. She wants you two to get over this as sisters." Engaged? 3 months after betraying me, Victoria was engaged to my ex-fiancé, and she wanted my blessing. "Get out." My voice was dead, flat. "Sophie, get out," I yelled, and my mother finally backed away. "Get out of the apartment. Get out of my life. And tell Victoria she can shove her family dinner where the sun don't shine." My mother left, muttering something about immaturity and jealousy. When the door closed, I collapsed onto the couch. "This is sick." Rachel was pale. "Sophie, your family is sick." I know, and I knew, but knowing didn't make it less painful. It was Rachel who planted the seed. 3 days later, when I was starting to accept that maybe I should just cut contact with everyone and move on. "You know what I don't understand?" Rachel was painting her nails, seemingly casual. "How Victoria got Marcus so easily. She was always, I don't know, cold, calculating. It's not like her to lose her head over someone." "Maybe she really loves him," I said without conviction. "Or maybe," Rachel looked at me, "she just wanted to take him from you." The words hung in the air, because Rachel was right. Victoria had never shown interest in Marcus before. She had always been polite, friendly, but distant. And then suddenly they were connecting? "Do you remember that guy?" Rachel continued. From Victoria's college. What was his name? Daniel. Daniel Carter. I vaguely remembered. Victoria had mentioned him a few times, years ago. A coworker or something. What about him? I saw him the other day, Rachel said casually, at the grocery store. He recognized me, asked about you, about Victoria. It was strange. Strange how? He got tense when I mentioned Victoria, as if her name made him uncomfortable. Something clicked in my head, an old, hazy memory. Victoria crying on the phone, years ago. Something about a guy who had rejected her. I had never thought much about it at the time. Rachel, I sat up straight. Do you have his number? Rachel smiled slowly. I can get it. Why? Because, I said, feeling something cold and focused form in my chest. I think Victoria has secrets, and I think Daniel Carter might be the key to uncovering them. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but first, you have to cook it. If you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Share in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by a family member? How did you deal with it? It took me 3 days to gather the courage to call Daniel Carter. Rachel had gotten his number through a mutual friend, and now he was on my screen, staring at me like an accusation. What the hell was I gonna say? Hi, remember my sister who apparently stalked you? She stole my fiancé and I want revenge? But I didn't need to say anything, because when Daniel answered, his first question was, "Is this about Victoria?" His voice was deep, careful, the kind of voice of someone who weighs every word before speaking. How did you know? I asked, caught off guard. Because, he sighed, Victoria Bennett isn't the kind of person people forget, unfortunately. We agreed to meet at a discreet coffee shop on the other side of town. When I arrived, Daniel was already there, sitting at a corner table, stirring a cup of coffee that seemed already cold. He was different than I expected. Tall, yes, handsome in an understated way, but there was something in his eyes, a caution, a wariness, that told me he had his own scars. Sophie, he stood up when he saw me, polite but not warm. Thank you for coming. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. I sat down, suddenly nervous. I'm not sure where to start. Start with why you're here, Daniel leaned back in his chair, because I have a feeling it's not for coffee. So I told him everything. Finding Victoria and Marcus on the red couch, the lightning engagement, the family dinner where they wanted my blessing. Each word came out easier than the last, as if telling a stranger made everything more real. Daniel listened in silence. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, just looking at his cup of coffee. That sounds exactly like something Victoria would do, he finally said. Rachel mentioned you knew each other. From college? Not exactly. Daniel looked directly at me now. We worked at the same company 4 years ago. I was a project manager. She was an analyst. We connected, or at least I thought we had. What happened? Daniel took a deep breath. Victoria was intense from the start. She showed up at the same places I did, always, by coincidence. My favorite coffee shop, my gym, even at the church I attended on Sundays. And I know she's not religious. Stalking. He was describing stalking. At first, I thought it was cute, he continued. Flattering, even. A beautiful woman interested in me? I was like, man, you got lucky. So I asked her out. And it was intense. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. She wanted to know everything about me. My childhood, my fears, my dreams. Said she had never connected with anyone like this, that I was special, different. I knew those words. Victoria had a way of making you feel like the most important person in the world, until you were no longer useful. We dated for 2 months, Daniel continued, and then I realized something. Victoria wasn't interested in me. She was interested in the idea of me, in the version she had created in her head. Whenever I tried to be real, show vulnerability, admit flaws, she would get disappointed, as if I had broken some kind of illusion. So you broke up? I tried. His voice grew dark. I said it wasn't working, that we were too different. that I thought it was better if we were friends. Normal breakup stuff, you know? And she didn't accept it? Didn't accept it is an understatement. Daniel laughed, but there was no humor there. She showed up at my apartment multiple times, called 20, 30 times a day, created fake social media profiles to follow me when I blocked her, sent gifts to my work, strange things, like photos of us that I didn't even know existed. My stomach churned. That's stalking. I know, Daniel nodded. It took her 3 months to finally stop, and it only stopped because I threatened her with a restraining order. But even after, I'd see her sometimes, across the street, in the work parking lot, always with that look, as if I belonged to her and just needed to realize it. My sister wasn't just manipulative, she was obsessive, sick, and I had never seen it. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked softly. Daniel looked directly at me now, because when Rachel mentioned your name, when she said you were Victoria's sister, I looked you up. I saw the pictures of your engagement on Facebook before you deleted everything, and I saw something familiar in Victoria's eyes in those photos. What? Possessiveness, he said simply. Not about Marcus, about you, as if you were something she owned. And when you were about to have something she didn't, a marriage, a happy life, she needed to destroy it. His words echoed something I had felt but never been able to articulate. "I need your help," I said suddenly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "My help?" "Victoria and Marcus are having an engagement dinner on Saturday. The whole family will be there." I took a deep breath. "I want you to come with me." "Sophie, she never got over you," I interrupted. "You said she stalked you for months, that you were an obsession. I bet she still thinks about you, that you're the only one who escaped. And you want what? For me to show up and make her jealous?" Daniel sounded skeptical. "No," I leaned forward. "I want you to show up and make her remember. Remember that not everything she wants, she gets. That she's not as powerful as she thinks." Daniel was silent for a long moment. "That's revenge." "That's justice," I corrected. "Victoria destroyed my life out of jealousy, out of some sick need to prove she's superior. She deserves to feel what I felt. She deserves to have her perfect mask ripped off in front of everyone." "And you think my presence will do that?" "I think," I said slowly, "that you're the only man who ever said no to Victoria, the only one who saw through her. And I think she never forgave you for that. Your presence won't just cause jealousy, it will completely destabilize her. I was asking a stranger to help me destroy my sister. And the scary part? I felt no remorse. You understand this is going to be nuclear, right? Your family, your relationship with Victoria, there's no going back after this." "There's no going back anyway," I replied. "Victoria ensured that when she chose Marcus. Now it's just a matter of who controls the narrative." "What if I say no?" "Then I'll go alone," I said honestly, "and I'll find another way to expose her. But with you there, it would be perfect. Poetic, even." Daniel took a sip of the cold coffee, wincing. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. "You know this is completely crazy, right?" "Completely. And you know Victoria will implode when she sees me? I'm counting on it." He was silent for another moment. Then, okay, I'll go." He leaned back in his chair, not for revenge, but because Victoria needs to understand that she can't keep destroying people. And if that means being your weapon of poetic justice, then so be it. I felt something warm spread through my chest. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was more determination, purpose. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "Don't thank me yet," Daniel warned. "This could blow up in our faces in ways we can't even imagine." He was right, of course. But in that moment, I didn't care. I just wanted to see Victoria's face when she realized she wasn't as untouchable as she thought. In the following days, Rachel and I planned every detail. I would accept the dinner invitation. I would be polite, even sweet. I would bring a plus one, someone I had recently met. Nothing major. Victoria took the bait immediately. "Oh, Sophie, I'm so happy you're coming." Her voice on the phone was saccharine, fake. "And you're bringing someone? How wonderful! Marcus and I are eager to meet him." I bet they were. Rachel helped me choose my dress, something elegant, but not too formal. Dark red, the color of revenge, she joked. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel asked the night before dinner. "Because once you do this, there's no going back. I'm sure." And I was. Victoria had destroyed my life without a second thought. Now, it was my turn. Daniel called me the morning of the dinner. "Last chance to back out. Are you backing out?" "No," he said. "Just checking if you are." "I'm not." "Then I'll see you at 7. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the naive Sophie who had found her fiancé with her sister a month ago. She was someone tougher, more focused, more dangerous. Revenge is a dish best served cold. But first, you have to cook it. My parents' house looked exactly as it always did. Imposing, perfectly decorated, with that air of perfect family that was always more facade than reality. The garden was impeccable, the outdoor lights created a welcoming atmosphere, and through the windows I could see people already gathered. My family, about to witness something they would never forget. Daniel parked out front, but neither of us got out of the car immediately. We sat in silence, the tension palpable. "You know," Daniel finally said, "there's still time to turn back. Go to a restaurant. Have a normal night. Do you want to turn back?" "No." He looked at the house. "But I needed to give you the option." I smiled despite the tension. "Let's get this over with." My father opened the door. Robert Bennett had always been a man of few words, but his eyes, brown like mine, always saw more than he let on. When he saw me, something crossed his face. Relief? Concern? "Sophie," he hugged me, tight, whispered in my ear, "I don't agree with any of this. You know that, right?" "I know, Dad," I whispered back. He stepped back and looked at Daniel, extending his hand. "Robert Bennett." "Daniel Carter." They shook hands, and I saw my father study Daniel with that analytical look he used. Whatever he saw, he seemed to approve of it, because he nodded slightly. "Welcome. Come in." The living room was full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone chatting, laughing, drinking wine. The perfect scene of family harmony. Until they saw me. The silence was gradual. One person noticed, then another, until the whole room was looking at me. At us, and then Victoria appeared from the kitchen. She was stunning, of course. Victoria always was. Navy blue dress that hugged every curve, hair in perfect waves, impeccable makeup. She had that smile, the smile I had seen 1,000 times, the smile that said, "I am perfect and you are not." Until she saw Daniel. The smile froze. For a split second, so fast you'd miss it if you blinked, I saw pure terror in her eyes. Then the mask returned, but her hands were trembling. She squeezed the wine glass so hard I half expected the glass to shatter. "Sophie!" Her voice was too sharp, too forced. "You came!" "Of course." I smiled warmly. "You invited me, and I brought my plus one. Victoria, this is Daniel. Daniel, my sister Victoria." The silence that followed was delicious. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes darted between me and Daniel, trying to process, trying to understand the game. "Daniel," she finally managed to say. Her voice was strange, strangled. What a surprise." "Victoria," Daniel nodded politely. "It's been a while. You two know each other?" My mother appeared out of nowhere, always the perfect hostess. Patricia Bennett in her designer dress and practiced smile. "We worked together," Daniel replied, before Victoria could. "A few years ago. Small world, isn't it?" Small world, where my sister stalked this man for months. Small world that was about to get much, much smaller. Marcus appeared beside Victoria, placing his hand on her waist possessively. He looked uncomfortable, red eyes, pale skin, like a man who wasn't sleeping well. Good. Marcus. He nodded, without looking me in the eye. Coward. Marcus. My voice was sweet, poisonous. Congratulations on the engagement. You two must be so happy. We are. Victoria regained her composure, that perfect smile back, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept darting back to Daniel. Very happy. In fact, that's why we wanted everyone here, to share our joy. How lovely, I said, and turned to Daniel. Isn't it lovely, dear? Daniel caught the cue perfectly. Lovely. He put his arm around my waist, pulling me closer. I saw Victoria choke on her wine. Literally choke. You two are... My mother looked between us, confused. Together, Daniel completed, smiling at me in a way that seemed surprisingly genuine. A few weeks now. Sophie and I reconnected through mutual friends. Funny how things work out, isn't it? Small world. Small world that my sister stalked this man for months. Small world that was about to get much, much smaller. Marcus appeared beside Victoria, placing his hand on her waist possessively. He looked uncomfortable, red eyes, pale skin, like a man who wasn't sleeping well. Good. Marcus. He nodded, without looking me in the eye. Coward. Marcus. My voice was sweet, poisonous. Congratulations on the engagement. You two must be so happy. We are. Victoria regained her composure, that perfect smile back, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept darting back to Daniel. Very happy. In fact, that's why we wanted everyone here, to share our joy. How lovely, I said, and turned to Daniel. Isn't it lovely, dear? Daniel caught the cue perfectly. Lovely. He put his arm around my waist, pulling me closer. I saw Victoria choke on her wine. Literally choke. You two are... My mother looked between us, confused. Together, Daniel completed, smiling at me in a way that seemed surprisingly genuine. A few weeks now. Sophie and I reconnected through mutual friends. Funny how things work out, isn't it? The room erupted in congratulations. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone commenting on how wonderful it was that I had moved on so quickly. Everyone except Victoria. She was paralyzed, looking at us with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was panic. Pure panic. Dinner was served. We sat at the large table, Victoria and Marcus at one end, Daniel and I at the other. My father was beside me, and I could feel his worried gaze, but he said nothing. The food was perfect. As always, my mother had hired a chef. Nothing less than perfection for the Bennett family. So, Daniel, Aunt Margaret, always the curious one, leaned in. What do you do? I'm an architect, Daniel replied easily. I have my own firm, specialized in sustainable design. How fascinating! Aunt Margaret was clearly impressed. And how did you two meet? Through Victoria, actually, said, and I saw Victoria choke again. We worked together a few years ago. Small world, as I said. Victoria never mentioned you. My mother looked at Victoria, frowning. No? Daniel seemed surprised. Strange. We were quite close back then, weren't we, Victoria? Victoria was white, completely white. It was a long time ago. Did you two date? Marcus asked, his voice tense. The silence was absolute, all eyes on Victoria. We went out a few times, Victoria finally admitted, her voice barely audible. But it didn't work out. It was nothing. Nothing, Daniel repeated, and there was something sharp in his voice. Interesting. I remember it differently. What do you mean by that? Marcus was turning red now. Here it was, the moment where everything began to unravel, and I felt no remorse. I just find it curious, Daniel continued, his voice casual but his eyes fixed on Victoria, how Victoria describes our relationship as nothing, especially considering she showed up at my apartment multiple times after I broke up with her, that she called me 30, 40 times a day, that she created fake profiles to follow me on social media. The room erupted, voices overlapping, questions being shouted, but all I saw was Victoria, her perfect mask finally cracking, revealing the pure panic underneath. "That's not true," she screamed, standing up. "He's lying. Sophie, you put him up to this." "Me?" I placed my hand on my chest, innocent. "Victoria, I barely knew Daniel before this week. How could I have put him up to anything?" "Because you're angry." Victoria was losing control now. "You're angry about me and Marcus, so you brought Daniel here to do what?" I asked calmly. "To tell the truth? About how you stalked him? About how obsessive you are?" "I'm not obsessive," she screamed. "No?" I pulled out my phone. "Then can you explain this?" On the screen was a screenshot, an Instagram profile, fake with a random name, but the photos it had liked, the posts it had commented on, all of Daniel, dated over the last 4 years. "You never stopped, did you?" My voice was calm, cold. "You never got over Daniel. You just hid it better, created fake profiles, followed him from afar, obsessed in silence." "How did you get that?" Victoria whispered, looking at the screen. "Rachel works in tech," I said simply. "She's very good at tracking fake profiles, especially when they all followed the same patterns, same activity times, same interests, all leading back to you." Marcus was looking at Victoria as if he were seeing her for the first time. You stalked him for 4 years?" "No!" Victoria was crying now, mascara streaking. "No, he was special. He didn't understand. We were perfect together." "We were nothing," Daniel said, his voice harsh. "You created a fantasy in your head, and when I didn't live up to that fantasy, you couldn't accept it." "Just like you couldn't accept that I was happy," I said, standing up. "Just like you couldn't stand to see me about to get married, so you destroyed. You always destroy what you can't have." She wasn't just manipulative. She was an emotional black hole, sucking the happiness out of everyone around her. "Sophie," my father stood up, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Maybe we should—" "No, Dad." I looked at him. "You always knew, didn't you? You always saw through her, but you never said anything. Because why? Because she's your daughter? Because family protects family?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The answer was in his eyes. "Victoria has problems," he finally said. "Serious problems. Your mother and I tried to get her help when she was younger, but Mom didn't want to hear it," I completed, "because admitting Victoria wasn't perfect would destroy the perfect image of the Bennett family." I looked at my mother. Patricia Bennett was pale, looking between me and Victoria as if she didn't recognize either of us. "You always favored her," I said, and my voice broke for the first time. "Always. No matter what she did, you always found a way to justify it, to make me feel like I was the problem." "Sophie, that's not fair," my mother began. "Not fair?" I laughed, a bitter sound. "She slept with my fiancé, Mom. She destroyed my relationship, my life, and you told me to be mature about it? You told me I needed to accept my share of responsibility?" The silence was absolute, everyone looking at my mother, waiting. She opened her mouth, closed it. I didn't know it was that bad." "You didn't want to know," I corrected, "because knowing would mean admitting that your perfect daughter isn't so perfect after all." Victoria was falling apart, completely falling apart, sobs shaking her body, mascara streaking her face, her perfect dress crumpled where she had clutched it. Marcus was beside her, but he looked distant, as if he were seeing her for the first time. You manipulated me," he said slowly. "Everything you said about Sophie, about how we were incompatible, about how I deserved more, that was all manipulation." "No!" Victoria grabbed his arm. "No, Marcus, I love you. Truly. It's not like with Daniel, I swear." "How can I believe you?" He pulled away. "How can I believe anything you say?" "Because I changed." She was desperate now. "I changed for you. I'm not that person anymore." You didn't change, Daniel said softly. You just got better at hiding. And with those words, something in Victoria broke. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, completely destroyed. A small part of me, a small but still present part, felt pity. She was my sister after all. But the larger part remembered the red couch, the lies, the betrayal. Compassion doesn't mean accepting abuse. Sometimes the most loving act is to let consequences teach what words never could. No one moved for a long moment. Victoria was on the floor, a heap of navy blue silk and smudged makeup. Marcus was paralyzed, looking at her as if she were a stranger. And my mother? My mother finally seemed to be seeing what we all already knew. It was my father who broke the silence. Everyone, please go into the living room. His voice was firm, controlled, the voice of a man accustomed to managing crises. Patricia, you too. I need to talk to the girls, alone. There was resistance, aunts murmuring, cousins looking curious, but eventually everyone left. Daniel squeezed my hand before he left, a silent gesture of support. When it was just the four of us, Dad, Mom, Victoria, and I, my father sat down heavily, suddenly looking much older than his 60 years. I should have done this years ago, he began, looking at Victoria. Should have forced this conversation. But I was a coward. And now, he gestured to the scene around us, now we've come to this. Robert, my mother began. No, Patricia. He raised his hand. You've had decades to listen. Now it's my turn to speak. He looked at Victoria, who was still on the floor, hugging her knees. Victoria, you need help. Professional help. This isn't normal. What you did to Daniel, to Sophie, to Marcus, that's not love. That's obsession. That's sick. I'm not sick, Victoria screamed, her voice hoarse. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted someone to choose me. And you think destroying other people's lives will make that happen? My father asked gently. Do you think Marcus will love you after discovering you manipulated him? Do you think Sophie will forgive you for sleeping with her fiancé? She always had everything. Victoria looked at me, and there was so much hatred in her eyes, so much poison. Sophie was always the favorite, the sweet one, the kind one. Everyone loved Sophie without her having to do anything. That's not true. My voice was calm. Mom always favored you. Always. You were the perfect daughter, the successful one, the one who never disappointed. Because I had to be, Victoria screamed. Because if I wasn't perfect, I was nothing. Don't you understand? You were loved for being you. I was loved for being perfect. And if I stopped being perfect, I would stop being loved. And there it was, the wound that had created the monster. The pressure to be perfect had broken something fundamental within her. Victoria, my mother finally spoke, her voice broken. I never meant for you to feel that way. But you did, Victoria looked at her. Every time you compared our grades, every time you commented on my weight, my clothes, my friends, every time you said, Victoria, you can do better, you were saying that I wasn't good enough as I was. My mother was crying now, silent tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. I just wanted you to succeed, for you to be happy. You wanted me to be perfect, Victoria corrected. And perfection is a prison, Mom. A prison that turned me into this. She gestured to herself. Into this thing that destroys everything it touches. There was a long silence. Then Victoria looked at me. Do you want to know the truth? Her voice was different now, lower, more real. I didn't want Marcus. I never wanted Marcus. He's okay, he's a nice guy, but I don't love him. I never loved him. She wiped her face, smudging her makeup even more. I just wanted to take him from you. The words were like punches, every one of them. Why? My voice was broken. Why would you do that? I'm your sister. Because you were happy, Victoria screamed. You were about to get married, to have your happy ending, and I was alone, still obsessed with a man who rejected me 4 years ago, still waking up in the middle of the night thinking about him. Still checking his social media profiles? Still hating myself for not being good enough for him? She looked at the door where Daniel had left. He said no to me. He was the first man who ever said no to me, who saw through me and decided I wasn't worth it. And I couldn't accept that. Rejection can break people in ways we never imagine, and broken people break others. So when I saw you with Marcus, Victoria continued, when I saw how he looked at you, how he loved you, something in me broke. Because if I couldn't have Daniel, why should you have Marcus? If I couldn't be happy, why should you be? That's sick, Victoria, I said softly. You understand that, don't you? That's deeply sick. I know, she nodded, tears streaming. I know. And the worst part? I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to be different. This thing inside me that needs to destroy, that needs to compete, that can't stand to see other people happy, I don't know how to kill it. My father knelt beside her. Then we're going to get help, real help, not just casual therapy, but serious treatment. Because you're right, you need to stop. Before you destroy more lives, before you completely destroy yourself. Marcus appeared at the door. He had heard everything. It was written all over his face. You never loved me. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Victoria looked at him, and for the first time, I saw real honesty in her eyes. No, I'm sorry, Marcus, but no. He took the engagement ring from his pocket. He had already taken it off her finger, I realized, and placed it on the table. I wasted 3 months of my life, destroyed a 3-year relationship, lost the woman I truly loved. For nothing. He looked at me. Sophie, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I need you to know. I was manipulated, but I was also weak. I let Victoria plant doubts because I had my own insecurities, because I was afraid I wasn't good enough for you. And instead of talking to you about it, I let those doubts consume me. You're right, I said calmly. You have no right to ask for anything. You made choices, Marcus. Choices that destroyed me, and now you have to live with them. I know, he nodded. I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry, and that you deserved much better than I gave you. He left without looking back, and something in me, something that was still holding on to hope, still wanting to believe that maybe we could fix it, finally died. Sometimes the end of something isn't dramatic. It's just silent. A door closing, a last look, and then nothing. Daniel appeared at the door. Are you okay? No, I answered honestly. But we will be. I looked at Victoria one last time. She looked small now, broken. Nothing like the perfect, powerful woman who had terrorized my life. I hope you get help, I said to her. Truly, because you need it. But I can't be here for it. I can't be your sister anymore until you figure out how to be human. Sophie. She reached out her hand. No, I recoiled. You destroyed this. You destroyed us. And it will take years, if it ever happens, to rebuild anything. And even then, it will never be what it was. I took Daniel's hand, and we left, leaving Victoria, my parents, and the wreckage of a family that had never been as perfect as we pretended it was. Outside, the air was cool, clean. I took a deep breath, feeling as if I was breathing for the first time in months. Are you okay? Daniel asked gently. You keep asking that, because I keep worrying. I looked at him. This man who barely knew me, but who had put himself in an impossible situation to help me. Why? Why did you do this? Why did you help me? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Because Victoria made me feel crazy. For months. She made me question my own sanity. And when you called me, when you told me what she had done, I saw a chance to finally get closure. To finally make her admit what she was. And you got it, we got it, he corrected. Together. We stood there in the front yard. 2 strangers, united by a woman who had hurt both of us. And something passed between us. Not romance, not yet, but understanding, solidarity. Do you want to get coffee? Daniel asked. For real this time. No revenge plans. Just coffee. I smiled. I'd love to. As we drove away from the house, I looked in the rearview mirror. I could see Victoria through the window, still on the floor, my parents by her side. Part of me felt pity, but the larger part felt relief. Relief that I was finally free. 3 months later, my life felt unrecognizable. Not in the dramatic movie way where everything resolves perfectly, but in small, incremental ways that accumulated into something that felt like peace. Away from the memories, away from the family, away from everything that tied me to the past. Rachel had helped me decorate. Nothing too fancy, but it was mine. Completely mine. Victoria was in treatment. Real, intensive treatment. My father kept me updated, short messages each week. She's progressing. She's starting to understand. She asks about you. I never answered questions about myself. Not yet. Maybe never. Therapy had shown me something important. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You can forgive someone, you can release the anger, the hatred, the desire for revenge without ever having to let them back into your life. And I was learning to do that. Slowly, painfully, but learning. Marcus had tried to contact me a few times. Long, detailed messages, explaining, apologizing, begging for a chance to talk. I had read the first one, deleted the others without reading. Not because I was still angry, but because there was nothing more to say. He had made choices, I had mine, and our paths simply didn't cross anymore. Daniel and I, it was complicated. We had started as accomplices in revenge, but something had grown from that, something real. We saw each other for coffee once a week, occasional dinners, long conversations about everything and nothing. They're not dating, Rachel had said, watching us at a coffee shop, but they're not just friends either. It's like a third thing. She was right. We were a third thing. Two adults, both wounded by Victoria in different ways, learning to trust again. There was no rush, no pressure, just possibility. Do you think you'll forgive her? Daniel asked one Tuesday night. We were at my apartment, eating Chinese food straight from the boxes, like civilized people. Victoria? I considered the question. I think I've already forgiven her. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting her back. And your mother? That was the hardest question. My mother and I had met once since that night, at a neutral coffee shop, both nervous, both unsure. I failed you, she had said bluntly. For years, I saw the signs in Victoria, the need for perfection, the sick competitiveness, and I ignored them. Worse, I fed them, because it was easier to have a perfect daughter than to admit she needed help. Why? I had asked. Why was it so important for her to be perfect? My mother had been quiet for a long moment. Because I never was. I grew up being the problematic child, the disappointment. And when I had Victoria, when I saw how naturally talented, naturally beautiful she was, I wanted her to have everything I never had. I wanted her to be everything I wasn't. And me? You were easy, she had smiled sadly. You were naturally sweet, naturally loved. You didn't need me in the same way. So I focused on Victoria, on molding her, on making her perfect. And in the process, I broke her. Parents are just people, people with their own traumas, their own wounds. And sometimes, unintentionally, they pass those wounds on. I don't know if I can forgive her yet, I had said honestly. Not completely, but I understand. And maybe that's a start. Now, 3 months later, my mother and I talked once a week. Short, careful conversations, rebuilding something that had been broken for a long time. My father was easier. He had been the constant, the safe harbor. We had lunch together every week, and he would tell me about work, about the house, about everything except Victoria. Until one day, he told me. She's doing better, he had said, stirring his coffee. Not cured. I don't know if she can be completely cured. but better. She's starting to understand the patterns, the compulsions. She's learning to recognize them before acting on them. That's good. She wants to see you. He looked at me. Not now. She knows she's not ready. But someday, when she is. Maybe, I had answered. Someday. And maybe it was true. Maybe years in the future, when the wounds had healed enough, Victoria and I could have some kind of relationship. Not as sisters, not as we were, but as two women who shared blood and history and trauma. But not today. Today, I needed to heal. Rachel had organized a girls' night. Her, me, and a few friends from work I was starting to get to know better. Nothing fancy, just pizza and cheap wine and laughs. You look different, one of the girls, Jessica, had commented. Lighter, more you. She was right. I felt lighter, as if a weight I had carried for years, the need to be the perfect sister, the perfect fiancé, the perfect daughter, had finally been lifted. I think I'm discovering who I am, I had answered, without all the expectations. And who are you? Rachel had asked, smiling. I'm still discovering, I admitted, but I think that's okay, not knowing yet, having time to find out. Healing isn't linear. There are bad days, days when the anger comes back, days when I wake up and the first thing I think of is that red couch. But each day gets a little easier, and that has to be enough. Daniel and I had gone to the movies last week. Something silly, a romantic comedy that neither of us really paid attention to. Mid-movie, he had taken my hand. Is this okay? He had whispered. Yes, I had whispered back. This is okay. And it was. It was more than okay. It was right. Not rushed, not forced, just natural. After the movie, we had walked through the park. It was autumn, leaves falling, crisp air, perfect. You know, Daniel had said, when you first called me, I thought you were crazy. I was crazy, I laughed, completely crazy. But brave, too. He stopped, turning to face me. You could have just let it go, moved on, but you chose to fight. You chose to expose the truth, even knowing it would hurt. Sometimes the truth needs to hurt, I said softly, before it can heal. And you're healed? I'm healing, I corrected. There's a difference. He had smiled, that smile that made his eyes sparkle. I like healing with you. And there, under the autumn trees, with leaves falling around us like confetti, he had kissed me. It wasn't like movie kisses. There was no dramatic music or slow motion. It was just real, sweet, full of promise. Now, sitting in my apartment, looking out at the city through the window, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the revenge, the truth, the healing. Victoria had taught me something important, even unintentionally, that sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the most, but also that we are stronger than we think, that we can survive betrayal, that we can rebuild. Not in the same way, not with the same people, but we can rebuild. Family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, about who stays when everything falls apart, about who loves you not despite your flaws, but including them. Rachel was family. Daniel was becoming family. My father had always been family, and my mother was learning to be. As for Victoria, maybe someday, but not today. Today, I was focused on myself, on healing, on discovering who Sophie Bennett was when she wasn't being defined by her relationship, her family, her expectations. And I was discovering that she was stronger than she imagined, braver, more capable of forgiving without forgetting, of moving forward without leaving behind who she was. My phone vibrated. Message from Daniel. Coffee tomorrow? There's a new coffee shop I want to try. I smiled, typing back, I'd love to, but you're paying. You owe me after that epic revenge. Fair, but only if you promise not to plan any more revenge for a while. No promises, but I'll try. I put the phone aside and looked out the window again. The city was lit up, thousands of lives happening simultaneously, each with its own pains, its own joys, its own stories of betrayal and redemption. And my story? It was far from over. But for the first time in months, I was okay with that. It was okay with not knowing the ending, with living one day at a time. Because some stories don't need happily ever after. Sometimes they just need new beginnings, second chances, courage to move forward even when the path isn't clear. And I had that. I had courage. I had strength. I had people who truly loved me. And that, I realized, was more than enough. This story shows us that family betrayal is one of the deepest pains we can experience, but it also shows us that we are stronger than we think, that we can survive betrayal, that we can expose the truth without becoming the villain, and that, in the end, the best revenge is not destroying those who hurt us, it's rebuilding ourselves. Sometimes, the people who share our blood are the ones who hurt us the most, but that doesn't mean we should accept the abuse. It means we must have the courage to set boundaries, to demand respect, to choose our own peace over false family harmony. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You can forgive someone, you can release the anger and hatred without ever having to let them back into your life. And that's okay. More than okay. Sometimes it's necessary. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any exciting stories. Leave in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by a family member? How did you deal with it? Always remember, you are stronger than you think. Your pain is valid, and you deserve people in your life who truly love you, without manipulation, without betrayal, without games. And you, what do you value more? Family loyalty or your own peace of mind?